Steve Stone with Mully and Haugh on 670 The Score.
Mully and Haugh, Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. Steve Stone joins us now on the Score Hotline, brought to you by Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas, home of the world's largest sportsbook. Steve, good morning. How are you?
Well, I'm pretty good, although the weekend wasn't as the boys had intended. And I guess this is pretty much a much-needed off day before the Guardians come to town.
Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest with you. I was kind of more miffed at the Kansas City thing, but it was rough to see the Sox come home and not. I mean, they did a good comeback yesterday, but they couldn't finish it, and it's kind of a reminder of just where they're at in this season. I think we're all waiting for something to happen, and I don't know what that is, but choose a lane maybe, right? I think we're just waiting to learn how there will be any kind of accountability here.
Well, the one thing that you always wonder when you're going through what the Sox are going through is it just a slump? Excuse me, is it just a slump, or is this what the club is going to be? Nobody can really answer that yet because this team has not been reunited, and I'm looking for maybe that spark that will come from Liam Hendrix coming back and Garrett Crochet with him, so the bullpen gets worked out. But right now at 14-28, 9.5 games in back of the Twins, things are not rosy. However, it doesn't mean they have to stay that way. It just means this is a reflection, a little over 25% through the season, of the way this team has started. Things didn't work out the way they wanted. Oscar Colas was sent down the minor leagues. He was thought of, especially in spring training, where he was hitting most everything and not striking out. He was thought of as one of the answers, 24-year-old left-hand hitter with power. That would have fit very nicely in the lineup. Moncada is back and doing a pretty good job. So slowly but surely, a lot of the injured are coming back. Jake Berger is back from maybe the quickest oblique injury that I've seen. Normally when you get that, it's 3 weeks to a month. He came right back, hit a home run yesterday. So the team just has to find some way to pull this together, because the answers truly are in that locker room. They're no place else. There's not going to be a whole lot of guys riding to the rescue. We're going to get, as I said, we're going to get Liam back and Garrett Crochet. They're going to come back. But the offense has got to get more things together. I think Luis Robert is shown over this prolonged period the kind of talent he is. I mean, he's a five-tool, all-world type talent, and now he's showing it. That's one of the bright spots, but they're not quite as many as the Sox would have liked.
Steve, I think it spoke to the frustration that it was evident in everybody watching and everybody maybe at the ballpark, that Tim Anderson had the moment at first base and everybody became a lip reader, and he appeared to say, I hate this place, when as it was confirmed post-game, he said, I hate the pitch clock. But people were very quick to make that leap as it was happening, or as the tough day that he endured. How did you see it happening, and how does he get out of this rut that he's in?
Well, first of all, I think Tim has a really good sense of what kind of player he is, where he is right now, what he can be. And look, this is a guy that was a batting champion. He's a guy who plays in all-star games. He's a guy that leads the way when the Sox are doing well. And right now at 260, he's not leading the way he wants to. Tim's a really terrific offensive player. I mean, there's no doubt about the fact that he's going to wind up much higher. And right now what he has to do, and this always goes with a guy who is not getting the production he would like, you have to go back to swinging at strikes. There have been historically a few, not many, but a few really good bad ball hitters in years past. I mean, they said that Yogi Berra was one of those guys that could hit anything, a nose-to-toe strike zone, and he parlayed that in the Hall of Fame. Then coming a little bit later, Vlad Guerrero was one of those guys that could swing at anything, could swing at pitches in the dirt, swing at pitches over his head. It didn't matter. Most guys can't do that, and Tim's in the process of trying to get more selective. I'm not going to tell you that he's going to walk a whole lot, because that really isn't his profile. However, what he can do is swing at strikes. When he does, we know how destructive he can be, and especially at the top of this lineup, he's got to get on base more. Benintendi has to get on base more, whether it's hitting the ball out of the ballpark, which Andrew has talked about, but it's the top of the lineup that's going to set the stage for the middle of the lineup, and then if they get on base, the middle guys get to drive them home.
Steve, are you concerned that Anderson doesn't really have his legs under him? I know he's had the left knee issue, and they're taping it up, and you just worry when you don't see the power numbers there anymore that he's playing hurt. He said he was grinding, and, I guess Grandal is also kind of grinding. So even when they have guys in the lineup, they're not always at their best, sadly.
No, unfortunately, what happens is one guy comes back, another guy goes on the IL. I mean, that has been one of the constants of this season. You can't really get this team as envisioned by Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams. You can't get them back on the field as one. So, we have to just wait it out and see what happens. But right now, this team needs some sort of a spark. They're going to have to get it internally because, like I say, I don't think anybody's going to come riding to the rescue at this point.
Steve, as for Andrew Vaughn, back in spring training, when you compared him to Steve Garvey, I'm nodding my head and I'm in agreement. And I see a lot of things that were positive and a lot of things to feel good about his future. The numbers haven't supported that so far this season. Have we overrated his value, overstated his potential, or is he just a guy who his struggles are mirroring his team's struggles and he'll break out of it at some point?
Well, I guess let me ask you a question, David. He has 29 runs batted in just about a quarter of a season. That pencils out to about, 115, 118 runs batted in. Do you think that's good? Because I do, and I think that's where he's going to wind up.
I think the RBIs, that's he's got 29 runs batted in. The power, the homers, maybe not as much. The hitting for average surprises me a little bit. I'm asking you because you see him every day. I'm not going to pretend to say that I've watched every pitch. I think I expected him to hit for a higher average than he's hit, even though the run production has been good.
Well, he's being paid to drive in runs because he's going to be that guy in the middle, sometimes at 2, sometimes at 3. And I think he's done a nice job of that. As far as batting average is concerned, he'd be the first to tell you that he's not particularly happy with it. And I would assume it's going to get better. But I think he's a quality major league hitter. He's back to his normal position for the first time. I think when you take a guy out of his comfort zone, you ask him to do something that he didn't do, which is the outfield, which was tough for him last year especially, because this guy's a lifetime first baseman. He's back at that position. There should be a comfort level there. And right now he's joined a few of these Sox regulars that would like to see better numbers. I think Andrew will see better numbers, but I do believe that along with Luis Robert, they're probably going to lead this team in runs batted in. Somebody's got to knock them in. He's one of the guys that can do that.
Steve, obviously, you mentioned Luis Robert Jr., who is a success story, not just because he's hitting homers right now, but also it's probably the best success story for Pedro Grifol, because when he didn't run, they talked to him, they benched him, then they found out that he was he had an injury that he hadn't told anyone about, and all that went on, and you wondered how that would turn out. Well, it's turned out pretty well, as you mentioned. So I think that maybe that is the best example of the manager kind of doing something right and the player responding to it.
Well, I do believe that Pedro has got a really good sense of what it takes to manage in the major leagues. He was on the bench quite some time with Kansas City, and he's getting his first shot at being a manager in the major leagues, and that comes with a learning curve. I don't care who you are, how long you've been in the game, but when you suddenly go from one of the coaches to the manager, there's a transition that first-time managers always go through, and I think Pedro is learning on the fly. He had a pretty good idea what he was coming into and the talent on a major league roster. However, a lot of that talent is not showing up the way everybody would like, and some of it has been injured. So Pedro has had to put together in his rookie season as a manager, put together a consistent lineup that gets it done. And right now, when you look at 14 and 28, it's not a stretch to say they've not come close to what everybody felt was their potential. And somewhere along the line, guys, and you know this, potential has to translate into performance. So the potential was there. Now the Sox have to put it into performance, and we can only see going forward. It's not going to get any easier. The month of June is a very tough month for the Sox when you look at the schedule. So that's why they felt in the month of May they could put something together, and we'll see what happens. This is still the longest homestand of the season, and we'll see if they can take advantage of it with the Guardians in Kansas City coming to town.
Steve, Liam Hendrix struck out the only batter he faced on Sunday, which was an improvement from his previous outing, after which he cast doubt about when he might return to the Sox. Some people thought it might be as early as tomorrow. Maybe it'll be later this week. Whenever he does return, assuming that it is, sooner rather than later, there's really no precedent for how to handle this. How would you suggest he be integrated into the mix? And what is his role? Is he automatically the closer? Does he go back to the way things were before all this? What are you looking for, and what do you expect?
Well, I think it's going to be a big lift for the ball club. What I'm looking for is a Liam to come back as a Liam we remember, but nobody really knows how his body is going to react over the long run to the chemotherapies that he was going through for his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I think it's a remarkable story whenever it is he gets back. He's going to be back sometime in May, no doubt. And when he takes that mound for the first time, number one, for him, it's going to be thrilling. But as far as easing him back, I mean, Liam isn't one of those guys that tiptoes into anything. He's one of those guys that storms his way through it. He says he pitches with anger. Whatever it is he uses, he's used it very well these last many years as being, if not at times he's been the best closer in baseball, but certainly one of the best closers in baseball. I anticipate that's going to be his job when he comes back. The Sox have shown, and they gave the first shot to Ronaldo Lopez. He has not gotten the job done in that role. It's a tough role. Very few people can do it. Liam can do it, and I assume when he comes back, whenever that is, he's going to be inserted into the spot that he's been in for quite some time. I don't think he has a personality to ease back into the lineup. I think he's one of those guys that wants to be thrown into the fire and see how it works out.
Dylan Cease was better. We were worried about him, frankly, Steve, because he had started slow, but he seemed to throw more strikes and be more aggressive in his outing.
No, I thought he looked really good. Mm-hmm. Obviously, after 3 starts or so of seeing that slider not quite as devastating as it's been, the command not quite there, missing a lot with high fastballs, getting behind, getting on an 0-2 count before eventually walking the guy, that always gets your pitch count up. So that's one of the things that he addresses with Ethan Katz. I think they found whatever it was. Sometimes it's a pretty simple fix. I didn't think Dylan would be struggling too long. His stuff is too good. He's too cerebral a pitcher to be mired in that kind of a slump. And pitchers go in slump just like hitters. He went into a bad one. He seems to be out of it because it's still a pretty good ball club that he faced with those Astros. And he threw the ball pretty much like he threw it last year when he came in second Cy Young Award voting. So I didn't think it would be long. Like most players, it's longer than they would like. But when you come out the other end, it certainly gives you a feeling of satisfaction. And it appears, at least for that one ball game, that Dylan is going to come out the other end because he is one of the premier pitchers in baseball. He just hasn't been himself.
Steve, you mentioned Oscar Colas, and it's interesting. I want to get your perspective here. In retrospect, it's easy in hindsight to say, well, you know what, the Sox should have delayed his promotion because then it would have given them something to, some momentum, some enthusiasm, something to look forward to if they were struggling in May. Bring up the young prospect and watch him flourish. Didn't happen. He struggled, and he got sent down. Now he's hitting 400. What is the right way to handle Oscar Colas moving forward for a team that's clearly struggling?
Well, I don't know if necessarily that batting average is the tell-all everything. What he was doing was swinging at a lot of pitches out of the zone, especially those low breaking balls. And, they're going to come up with a way to get you out. That's usually what happens. And hitters many times come up the first time they're looking at a team or the first couple of weeks they're there, they do pretty well. But all of a sudden, with all the video that's out there and all of the soft spots exposed, they're going to take advantage of young hitters who have a huge strike zone, as Oscar did. They wanted him to go down in the minor leagues to work on pitch recognition, work on command of the strike zone, understand what he did well and what he can do going forward. And he has to play every day, which is one of the reasons why he wasn't put on the bench. Many times you get a guy who's struggling, you put him on the bench for a few days, and he can work his way out working with, the hitting coaches the Sox have. In the case of Kolas, he's too young to sit on anybody's bench. He has to play every day. That's one of the reasons they sent him down. And you never really know how a guy is going to react to that because it's startling. When you're playing in the major leagues, you got that third deck, you got really nice lights, you're traveling first class, staying in first class hotels. You get sent down, and it's like a slap in the face, and everybody reacts differently. Oscar went down, and he went down with the idea that he was going to work his way out of this, and so far it's looking pretty good. If he just swings at strikes, like most of these guys, he's probably going to be fine. And he does give the Sox what they need, which is a left-handed power bat. I assume that we're going to see him in the not-too-distant future. You'd like to think that he would work everything out in the minor leagues. So far, he's made really good strides, and I think, looking at some of the reports, that he is swinging at more strikes than he did when he was here.
Steve, Michael Kopech is just kind of a riddle wrapped in a mystery. The guy has, can only go 4 2/3 because he walks 6, but he only allowed 1 hit, and he strikes out guys. I think he had 5 strikeouts. So he's throwing a ton of pitches, and he can't stay in the game because he's walking too many guys. But he threw a 1-hitter. It was just a weird outing on Friday, and frankly, he's had a few of those. Yeah,
the stuff was pretty good from the start, and it's really interesting because some of the fine folks on Twitter were saying, well, when I said he had great stuff that day, well, how can he have great stuff? He walked 6 guys. Yes, but one is not the same as the other. The great stuff is one thing, which he had. The command of it is something else, which he didn't have quite as much as he would like. Michael's got a really good arm still, even though it's not 102 anymore. It's still fast enough at 97, 98. What he's got to do is get the ball over the plate, especially early in the count. It really helps to get 1 or 2 pitch outs. That keeps your pitch count down, but he has the same problem as Dylan Cease was having, which was piling up the pitches early. If you're going to strike out a lot of guys, you're going to throw a lot of pitches. But it's trying to end at bats sooner than the hitter would like by throwing pitchers pitches and forcing him to swing at it. If you get a reputation of throwing the first pitch or 2 of the first 3 pitches as strikes, you're going to find these guys are not going to be taking consistently because they don't want to get that far down in the count. That's one of the things that Michael's going to learn. And again, he's still, not chronologically, but from a baseball perspective, he's still a very young starting pitcher, and he's got to learn the lessons that the major leagues is going to teach you. And one of them is get some 1-pitch outs by being in the strike zone on that pitch. Don't try to throw the perfect pitch on strike 1 because then you don't have anything left for strike 2 and 3. So you make a pitch, not the pitch, and then concentrate. When you get a chance to wipe a guy out, you wipe him out. And Michael's in the learning process of doing that.
Steve, I don't know how many teams you were on that were on pace to lose more than 100 games in mid-May, but I do think I'm serious in asking this question because the good news is that there's still a lot of games left in the season. It's also the bad news, I think, is in terms of how you look at it. What's the secret for a team in this situation to kind of stay positive, to not lose hope, to not get let dissension creep in? Generally speaking, what do the Sox need to do to make sure this doesn't just totally unravel?
Well, there's really not much to say except it's got to come from the players. I mean, that's the guys that are sitting down there every day working very hard. This is like most teams, this is a hard-working major league team. They're just not getting results right now. So what has to happen is you break the hole down to its simplest parts. You're sitting 14 games below, and if you think about, well, I got to get to 500, I got to get there today, that's not the proper thought process. The proper thought process is every game becomes a world unto itself, and you have to do everything you can to win that day. So the easiest thing to do is win every at-bat, win every concentration with every hitter, and eventually you're going to win that game. The more times you do that, the more able you are to be able to turn this around and to start, and there's no time like the present. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen with this ball club, but I do know that 333 baseball over the course of a year makes for an enormously long season. So here's hoping, along with all the Sox fans, that this team is able to turn it around. But it will come from the players. It's not anything the manager can do. It's not anything that the coaches can do. It's the players either getting it done or not, and that will determine the win-loss record.
Great stuff, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, guys, have a good rest of the show, and I'll see you in a week, and hopefully things will be a little rosier.